Yeah. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks.
I spoke to you this morning.
We did.
So I should be good at this. This should be a good one.
You should know all my answers.
Okay, right, here we go. So we're going to talk about green metals more broadly. You've got a kind of a suite of green metals. When you kind of run through the projects, but also briefly overview of the projects, people know what we're going to be talking about. I think we'll sort of dive into the US element.
Okay. Well, yeah, our projects are mainly nickel copper PG sulfides. We've got large scale projects in Finland, Ontario, as well as the Yukon. We're very much an exploration and development stage company still, and building resources.
You are making discoveries too.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've had a great track record on that.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's start off with, if we can, Tyko, because one, because of its location, and two, because of the commodities we're talking about, quite important to that kind of North American narrative around critical minerals. But it's early stage. So what do you do? How do you play that?
Well, it's early stage, definitely, and it's really been more of the focus of our attention over the course of the last year, subsequent to our second discovery there. And it's extremely high grade nickel copper sulfide. There's really no PGs in it. It's a large property package, about 30,000 hectares in size. But what we're seeing is extremely high metal tenor in the sulfides. And the two key zones where we've had discoveries, Smoke Lake or West Pickle, we're getting 10% nickel plus, 4 or 5% copper. There's pretty spectacular grades. Now, we don't have enough tonnage at this point in time, and we need to expand those resources. And that's really what we're working on, in addition to looking strategically throughout the property to try and de-risk it.
Right. So how do you get that scale? Because as a small junior, small market cap, not really being looked at too much by the majors yet, despite all these conversations going on. You've got money. You've raised money sensibly and at the right times. So you've got optionality as to how you approach it. So how does that scale come and over what time frame?
Well, yeah, on a pro forma basis, we started the year with about $18.3 million of cash, $5 million of which is flow through money dedicated for the Tyko project in Ontario. Okay. And it's very much the focus. Our objective is really to prove up the geological model that we developed last year on the back of about 10,000 meters of drilling and sampling that we did. There's a large intrusion on the north side of the property. It was emplaced somehow. We believe there are east-west trending dikes or conoliths, as they say in the nickel space, that may have fed this thing. And we've been proving out that model since Q3 of last year. So far, it's working very well. And our activity this year is really going to be to continue to prove that model, that these interpreted conoliths are actually feeder systems, that they host the right type of rocks, and hopefully we see some mineralization in them. And we're starting that process by doing soil sampling over very strategic grids.
Right. Are there any sort of parallels that we can maybe reference there? Because you've kind of got this kind of swarming, you've got to prove out this model, right? And swarming sounds complicated because it sounds like things won't be where you expect them to be.
Quite possibly, but it's an atypical terrain. So if you start off at the basics, you've got this magma intrusion that's coming up from the center of the earth, if you will, and it finds various pathways to get to the surface, and there's deposition. Over the last couple of billion years, a lot of erosion occurred, but there's various pathways exist, and you're chasing that. So if you're looking at analogs elsewhere in the world, you could look at Voisey's Bay, the eastern deeps portion. That was just one of these pathways or conoliths that had hosted the mineralization. Norilsk is another one. Talon Metals is another one. What makes our particular project a little bit more complex from a geological perspective is after that original emplacement, there was a subsequent intrusion of tonalite, which changed the geometry. So instead of having that pipe and just chasing that pipe with geophysics and a drill bit, you got to use a little bit more geophysics to try and find where that mineralization or those rock units may have been shifted to.
Right. So don't want to get too technical. Don't want to lose half the audience here. But I do want to talk about how small companies stay relevant, keep the lights on. You've got a lot of cash. That really helps because a lot of cash constrained companies struggling at the moment in terms of not just in terms of paying the G&A, but also working out what to do next. What's the growth component of the story anymore? The growth component of the story for you is what? Is it going to be North America? Because you've got the Finland assets, you've got the Yukon assets going on out there. So how do you play it?
Well, right now we're prioritizing North America and the Tyko project.
Right.
That's where we've got, we perceive the least amount of risk to track that property. We've got permits on it. But we see ourselves fundamentally as a nickel copper PG sulfide story with multiple assets that have the opportunity to host large depositions.
Right, and I kind of want to give people insight in terms of the way you think about stuff. So you're not casual with your thinking. The Finland projects, they're big, they're meaningful, but you don't think they're relevant in the current market? Is that
well? We have two projects in Finland.
Yeah.
One of which, the KS project, we really haven't touched. It's an extremely large anomaly that has only got one drill hole in it that the Finnish Geological Survey did about 2 years ago. But it's a higher risk. It's a deeper target, but it's one of these Canalask or feeder dike systems. Where our focus was previously was on the LK project. So it's bulk tonnage disseminated at surface. And we came out with a fairly large resource last year with extremely advanced metallurgical work. And in all categories, roughly 4.1 million ounces palladium equivalent. Most of the economics focused on palladium, secondarily copper, and then nickel, because these are polymetallic settings. So you've got a mix of metals. But quite frankly, that came out in April, just as the market was starting to roll, and there hasn't been a lot of interest for that style of mineralization. So what we've done is we've pivoted to our efforts to Ontario, specifically on Tyko, but to hedge our bets a little bit more, we also acquired the Canalask project in the Yukon.
Well, why don't we talk about that? And I want to come back to Tyko. So, okay, the Canalask project. What did you pick up? How much did it cost? Why did you do it?
We picked it up because it's another one of these systems where you've got a large dike or conolith. The geometry is preserved from the time it was in place. It's very close to the Alaskan border on the mafic ultramafic trend.
Right.
It has a historical resource, about 400,000 tons, 1.3% nickel. They never reported the copper. It actually was a property being worked by Falconbridge. And when they were acquired about 15 years ago by Xstrata, they dropped their exploration package. And this was one of those assets, and it went into a junior and sat there dormant for 15 years. And we've acquired a project that has this unexplained deposition. It's got untested geophysical targets on it, and it's a simpler project than we have on Tyko. So for $25,000 of cash, it was a pretty simple deal to pick it up from 25,000. There's some equity involved as well, and deferred consideration. But it's a very interesting option for us, and it's low lying. There's no mountains where we're targeting on the property. We're within 4 kilometers of the Alaskan highway. So from an infrastructure perspective and the ability to execute a cost-effective program, it ticks all the boxes.
Okay, so and I guess you're attracted because it kind of meets a sort of an asset profile or style that your team understands. There is that. Just this is really interesting because you're building up kind of portfolio, small company, building up a portfolio, which hopefully has some future value. Is this because you think if you've got a bit of money, you can do enough to make it interesting to someone else to JV with, or you can do enough to spin it out? Because
yes,
alternative financing is the name of the game at the moment, right? When markets are like this, we don't know how long they're going to last. We've, all sorts of conversations about, banking's role in mining and, what that could look like in the future. Companies have got to start taking control of their own narrative, but also control of their own destiny in a way. So alternative financing, call it what you want, but, looking at different ways of financing. Portfolio construction for you, that's going to work?
Well, I certainly hope so. That's the plan. We are very much believing in the fundamentals of sulfide nickel. There's a huge demand coming with the transition of transportation to the battery electric vehicle.
Yeah.
So positioning ourselves with highly prospective assets of scale at low cost seems like a wise thing to do, because then you're in the game. If you don't have the asset as that cycle is coming on more and more with more and more strength, you're going to be left behind. So tactically, we don't want to dilute ourselves by, trying to explore every asset we have or every project we have, because that doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. We've got several companies, if you will, with regards to our projects, but we're focused very much on a risk-based approach and start with one, advance it, do a little bit of work to keep the other ones going. And maybe we get that JV, or maybe we get that spin out opportunity as the nickel price responds.
Okay, so you're going to show something, you show that you can make something work. Tyko's the golden child there. You're not going to pick many other projects up with 25K, one suspects.
Sulfide nickel, no.
Are you looking around? Are you seeing cash-strapped companies wanting to have conversations with you? And would it have to be wholly owned?
Well, in this market, there's not a lot of cashed-up juniors, right?
No,
it's very tough. So we're a little bit different from that perspective. So we are well positioned to be able to go look at those that don't have the same balance sheet that we have. We just recently announced a strategic partnership with Glencore. They've come in and taken 9.99% interest in the company.
In fact, Joe maintained that as well, haven't they?
Yeah, they topped it up. They came in. We subsequently closed a small acquisition, and they maintained their anti-dilution provision. So yeah,
it's sounding a bit more like a financial play. Do you know what I mean? You're coming in as like almost private equity. You're a public company, but you know what I mean in terms of the attitude to kind of building up portfolio of products, which they can then flip out, monetize at some later days as some kind of protection mechanism.
Right, but also, this is a high risk endeavor, exploration. Not every project is going to win. The vast majority are not. So just as we had with, a very large resource being published last year in Finland on the back of extremely good network as well, the market yawned. Right, then the whole market went down. So maybe you got to pivot a little bit and say, okay, well, we've got this other thing that looks really good. If the market's not receptive here, perhaps this will be more receptive. And certainly, with the amount of discoveries we've had over the last 4 years, I think our team, and I'm not a geologist, I'm a financial guy by background, but the exploration team is getting a little bit of recognition for being prudent with the allocation of capital, taking a very scientific approach to the exploration activity, and not being wholly driven by the market whims of the day.
No, it's interesting to me. Yeah, I like that structure. Okay, back to Tyko and the team. I know you said they're kind of getting on with it. Just talk to me precisely what they're going to be able to achieve with the capital that you've given. But also, what have you set them the target of achieving with the capital that you've given them?
Yeah, so we have 3 zones identified on the project that this year's exploration program is going to be targeting. They're fairly large areas. We're starting off with a very detailed mapping soil sampling program. I think we're already up to probably several thousand soil samples where we're looking for anomalous values of nickel, copper, and cobalt. Once we have that data in and fully processed, we're going to integrate it with our geophysics, whether it's the electromagnetics or the magnetics, in 3D modeling, and then start drilling. So our plan is to drill 8,000 to 10,000 meters this year, in addition to what we've done previously. But what we want to do is de-risk these conoliths and make sure they are actually the right types of rocks.
Okay, well, thanks for the update. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
I like the strategy. Interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, cheers.